thank you all very much for coming out. I thought it was important that we gather today and talk a little bit about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That measure was just passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden. It's the probably the third most significant investment infrastructure in the history of our country. It is extremely important in all aspects, and we always, it's a $1.2 trillion bill that is expected to create 2 million jobs a year for the next 10 years. And when we talk about infrastructure, we think roads, highways, and bridges, and that's most certainly in there. For California, there'll be a little north of $25 billion for highways. There'll be about $10 billion for transit programs, over $4 billion for bridges. There's money for wildfire prevention, mitigation, and for clean water. And there's about $385 million that will come to California for electric vehicle charging stations. This is a down payment on what we have to do in regard to climate change, and a move to electric vehicles is part of that. And with this type of investment, you'll be able to drive long distances and be able to fill up. Why we're here today is to talk about one particularly important aspect of the bill, and that is an investment in broadband. There will be at least $100 million in broadband investment that will come to California. And this is important for a number of reasons. First, it's the largest investment in broadband infrastructure in our history. And today, we have a number of people who are going to speak on the broadband component. We've got first responders, educators, students, healthcare workers, and business owners, all of whom will benefit from this, and their constituents will benefit from this as well. And I just want to give two examples, and then I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. When we passed one of the original COVID relief bills in Congress, we included in that bill legislation of mine that expands telehealth. And anyone on Medicare could then use telehealth in order to avoid going to a facility and undue exposure to COVID. At the same time, we were doing distance learning for students. Well, anybody who had broadband access to the technology, they were getting different health care and different educational opportunities than the child who didn't, or the Medicare recipient who didn't. So I think those are perfect examples of why it's important to expand broadband. And the speakers today are going to talk about the first responder benefits, the education benefits, the healthcare benefits, and how important it is to local businesses and our economy. Remember, it's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So 2 million jobs a year, our economy and local businesses are extremely important. I'd like to turn it over to someone I consider a partner in this, our Assemblywoman, Cecilia Aguilar-Curry, who's been a real leader on broadband and on telemedicine in the state legislature. And as Cecilia's coming up here, I'll just point out that the way we did this is we give the money to the state. So the state's going to be funding all this. So this may be the last time I get any attention in this after these guys horn in and take all the accolades for doing it. But a great partner, a great friend, Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguilar-Curry.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here, and I'm so pleased to be here to be talking about broadband. Anyone that knows what I've done the past 12 years is working on broadband. And unfortunately, it took the pandemic to really bring it to the surface. And so now we know it's a need. It's a need for everyone across the board. The pandemic and the wildfires of the past years have made it glaringly clear how critical connectivity are in the times of emergencies, in massive transition for students learning from home, and during wildfire evacuations. The accelerated need for broadband cannot be ignored. And so over the past couple of years, myself and Senator Gonzalez here in the state of California have worked diligently, working with the administration to make sure we could get broadband. And we are lucky enough that the governor has signed the bill for almost $6 billion of infrastructure through the state. And with the additional money from the federal government, it only makes it better. It only makes sure that we will make sure it's equitable for everybody in the state of California. If we don't work as partnerships, we'll never get anything done. So it's incredible to thank all of you that are here today, my cities, my counties, my rural groups that have all come together to make sure our bills can get across the finish line. Right now, only 2 months after we had our bill signed, we have 18 projects started throughout the state of California, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas. So we have the opportunity to put this up and down the state, up and down working with Caltrans to make sure we have fiber, that everybody has the opportunity of quality, affordable internet. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Congressman. I want to thank all of your colleagues in the government, federal government, that have believed in infrastructure. And I'm going to pass this on to Captain Akers.
Thank you very much. Steve Aker, and I'm the chief of Sonoma Valley Fire District. And thank you, Congressman Thompson, for allowing me to be here and speak to you a little bit about some of the impacts broadband has on us as first responders and some of our experience being without broadband when we needed it. So as a modern progressive fire district, we rely very heavily on new technologies, communication systems, including broadband. Almost everything we do now has a technology component to it, from doing our daily equipment checks to managing emergencies to all of our communications amongst ourselves, other first responders, as well as our community. Unfortunately, as a fire department and community, we've experienced more than our fair share of recent disasters. Going back to 2017 and the fires that greatly impacted our community. I want to focus on one particular aspect of those fires and some of the other incidents that we've had since then. PSPS events, even small events where we've had telephone poles taken out and we've lost our broadband communications. The system is vulnerable. We saw that in 2017 with our inability to communicate amongst first responders and challenges we had there. Thankfully, we had redundant systems, but also in notifying our communities. When we lose these communications, it hampers our ability to provide service and to inform our citizens. Another important benefit that I'd like to mention with the broadband bill is how the expanded broadband access is going to be beneficial in our rural areas. We serve all the way from Kenwood down to and including the city of Sonoma. There's a lot of rural areas within there, and sometimes internet service is spotty right now. I can't wait for that to be improved and for us to be able to reliably communicate whether it's important safety messages, evacuation messages that fire commanders and emergency managers have to get out, or whether it's just being able to connect with our community about services that we provide and allow them the opportunity to connect with us. That's something that we've all seen in the pandemic is that in-person communication and business has had to shift. And that's no different for us in providing emergency services and our other services to our community. So with that, I want to say thank you again to Congressman Thompson and his team, and Assemblymember Aguilar Curry for the efforts to see this bill through, and look forward to seeing some of these very real impacts and benefits to our community. So thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Judy Sakaki from Sonoma State University.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. Thank you so much, Congressman Thompson, for all of your efforts and your advocacy. This really matters. This expansion of broadband really matters to higher education nationally, in the state, and really locally at Sonoma State. This matters to us. When we had to change to online instruction primarily during COVID, we really found that many of our students and staff and faculty did not have access that they needed. We provided hotspots and laptops to many of our students, and this enabled them to continue their instruction. So having access to broadband all around our campus is important. On campus, we had access in our residence halls, but we had dead spots on parts of our campus as well that we needed to address. So this really helps us in making it higher education accessible to the broad range of students that we serve in other counties, in Lake County, in Mendocino counties, in rural areas that are part of the Sonoma State community but don't have the same access. So we are excited about the possibilities going forward. We will be coming back. We have over 70% of our classes will be in person in January, but we still have students that need that access to broadband to really not only really do well at the university, but to succeed beyond the university and to continue to serve our campus communities in the surrounding region. So thank you very much, and thank you. We look forward to working with all of you in making sure that access is available and affordable for all of our students. So thank you very much. And next I have, let's see, Cameron Ituri Carpenter, Santa Rosa Junior College student.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank Congressman Thompson for inviting me to speak today. My name is Cameron Ituri Carpenter, and I'm a longtime community member, but today I'm speaking from my experience as a student. Because of the pandemic, my life changed drastically, as I know it has for so many people. But for me, that means returning to school. I've been away from higher education for almost 10 years when I enrolled in Santa Rosa Junior College. And when I did, I found myself enrolling in fully remote classes for the first time. My ability to receive an education was now completely dependent on my ability to access the internet. Access to reliable internet isn't just a luxury like it was when I first started college. It is a necessity. It is an essential utility. Aside from COVID creating conditions that required only online-only courses, any and every college-level class has work that requires the internet. Whether it be research, media access, class communications, or simply the act of turning in a paper, computers and the internet are as essential as paper and pen was to generations past. And as we become more dependent on technology for our education, this access becomes a question of equity. Over time, we have developed norms that require us to use the internet to function effectively in society. If I want to apply for that job, I need to go online to get the job application. If I want to apply for health insurance, government aid, to get directions to the store, sign up for COVID vaccines, check my bank balance, or enroll in my community college, I need to have access to the internet. And yes, there are often ways to accomplish these tasks without the internet, but not to the competitive standard that we've set for people in the modern world. A person with access to the internet would be able to accomplish all of those tasks in the time it would take for someone without to accomplish just one of them. We have set a standard. College and now even K-12 requires that students can utilize online materials. Kids and families without the resources to buy that access are at an extreme disadvantage, and I've seen that inside of our community myself. They will get left behind in their education. Building broadband infrastructure for our communities is an essential step towards leveling that playing field and giving everyone a fair chance at a better education, better jobs, and a better income. Education is the means of equity, and we have an obligation to provide the means of that education. And so I just want to thank Congressman Thompson, his office, and the administration for all they have done to bring that about. I am going to welcome Cheryl Johnson from the Sonoma Valley Community Health Center next. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone, and thank you Congressman for assembling all of us today. Everyone before me have made excellent points about the need for broadband and how much it affects our community. When we first started doing COVID and the appointments were all online, we had to hire groups to have people make their appointments because they didn't have access to internet. Congressman Thompson has done an excellent job of getting us to have telehealth, but here in Sonoma, we couldn't use it because a lot of our constituents, our patients, didn't have access to internet. As a matter of fact, the reason why we were as successful as we were with telehealth visits was because the Sonoma Valley Unified School District gave hotspots to its students to gain access. The interesting thing, as I was telling Rebecca one day, is the fact that even in our own building, the further I get into the center of our building, the less internet access I have. And that's just in a single building. Many years ago, we used to have a mobile unit go throughout the valley and go to the springs, go to the schools and provide services. When we went on EHR, electronic health records, we had to pull the mobile out of service because if I was in this part of town, I needed AT&T. If I was in this part of town, I needed T-Mobile. If I was in another part of town, I needed Verizon. And there are other places where we needed satellite. It just got to be too much of a hassle to try and make the adjustments to try and get internet access in the valley. So I'm really glad that we are looking at this because as we move along in healthcare, the ability to access specialty services, the ability to access certain providers is really going to be reliant on someone's ability to have internet. And if we do not address that now, then the disparities that we see in healthcare will just get larger. So I really appreciate the fact that this is being recognized as an issue and something that is being addressed. And I look forward to the day when we can actually provide telehealth and I can walk to the middle of the building and still have internet. With that, I would like to introduce Max Perry. He's with the Redwood Community Health Coalition. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for having us. My name is Max Perret. I'm with the Redwood Community Health Coalition. We're a consortium of community health centers, including Sonoma Valley, which Cheryl is the CEO of. I'm here to thank the Congress member and thank the Assembly member as well for their leadership during the pandemic and beyond as we look at connecting everyone in our community to broadband internet and ensuring that everyone has access to telehealth services, which, as we've seen in the last 2 years, are a necessity, not just some sort of luxury that someone on private insurance can have. Our patients are underinsured and uninsured. Many of them are on Medi-Cal, and their access to care during the pandemic was contingent on them having access to broadband internet. So these dollars that are going to flow over the coming months and years are going to make a huge difference in ensuring that everyone in our community can access the care they need. I did just want to emphasize one piece of this bill. It's the $14 billion that is going to go towards the Digital Connectivity Fund to ensure that everyone in their own home can have some dollars each month, $30, to go towards their internet bill. There's many different components of this bill. That's just one piece, but it will ensure that our lowest income residents and our lowest income patients at our health centers in Sonoma County and beyond are going to have access in their own home so that they don't have to take multiple buses, multiple transit lines in order to get the care that they need. So thank you so much. Really appreciate all of the work that everyone here has done, and thank you, Congressmember, for your leadership on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Next up is Mark Bodenhamer with Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Max. My name is Mark Bodenhamer, CEO of the Sonoma Valley Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of our local business community, I'd like to welcome those of you who are visiting Sonoma Valley today. And boy, our job is really easy on a day like this to represent this great business community and all of you here. First, I want to start off by thanking Congressman Thompson. Your leadership and working with your colleagues to get the funding bills passed last year was essential in preventing just complete economic devastation both here and throughout the entire nation. And more than anything, not only you, but also Assemblymember Aguirre Curry, Chief Baker, and many others in the community sat down and just continued meeting with local businesses to ensure that they were being heard and that people knew how our government could come together and help them get through those challenges. So now turning to broadband. 2020 really taught us how interconnected we really all are. Everybody who's up here, fire, public safety, education, health, All of these different entities need to all work together to keep our community moving forward. It was broadband and internet connections that helped us do that during 2020 and the early part of this year and continuing moving forward. Here in Sonoma Valley, we've had challenge after challenge for almost 5 years, and every time one of those things comes along, it is this group of people and many others who gather online and keep things moving forward and ensure that our residents' needs are met. And we can't do that without reliable internet service. So we're really excited to have this happen. Speaking about business community, it really was such a challenge for businesses. I'm just now getting to the point where I can use the word pivot without wincing a little bit, but every business had to pivot to an online business model, and that's what kept us afloat last year. In a minute, you're going to hear from Jeff Zappelli from Walt Wines, and they're a great success story about a business that overcame the challenges and used internet technology to keep their business afloat. But many others around this region and throughout the state of California don't have reliable, safe internet access that's affordable, and this bill is going to help address that. So we're really happy to see this investment in our future, not just for the economy, but for the people of Sonoma Valley, and we're really just pleased to see this moving forward so that we can all stay connected and keep our economy healthy and sustainable. Now I am pleased to welcome my good friend Jeff Zappelli from Walt Wines, who's going to talk about their success navigating last year.
Thank you, Mark. You're really good at that. Yes, my name is Jeff Zappelli, and I'm the general manager for Walt Wines. We are a winery here in Sonoma, but we also are a family-owned winery that crosses over into districts in Napa, Anderson Valley, Mendocino, all the way down to Santa Barbara County. So Mark asked me today to talk about a success story for a small business, and for us in the pandemic, it was absolutely about how do we pivot and how do we continue to maintain a business and also continue to employ the staff that we have online. And if you remember, in the lockdown, we had no access to selling or to even hosting guests while we were here in the tasting room. We were fully able to continue to work online, however, and so for that, we actually enabled all of our employees. We on day one during the lockdown, we sent them all home with computers and access to our servers and access to our phone lines so that we could actually supply them with the ability to reach out to our customers and to pivot our business from being primarily an retail business where we see everyone and we still love seeing everyone, but we could do that in a remote way and still connect with our customers. And so through that ability, we were able to retain 100% of our employees that wanted to stay involved with us and wanted to actually continue to work with us. And that proved successful not only during the pandemic, but after the pandemic. We were actually able to grow that business and hire additional people to continue those efforts that we were doing in a remote way and complement them with a in-person experience. And so that was immensely important for us as a business, but it's also not just in times of tragedy when access to broadband is important, but it's also just as we go forward into the future. You know, with agriculture, we're facing new challenges every day as we're starting to face new and different ways that the climate is affecting our agriculture. And in one ways that we're doing that in our vineyards in Sonoma County is actually by implementing systems that can take in and register moisture in the soil, different growth patterns, how our vineyards are behaving in the heavy times of drought and when we have heavy floods. And we can do that through remote monitoring systems, and by providing broadband access to these remote areas and these remote farms, we can actually start to measure those. And in fact, this year we've partnered with the Sonoma County Wine Growers Association to start monitoring greenhouse gases in ways that we can optimize our vineyard to better sequester greenhouse gases and to better provide farming that not only provides great wine, but also might help the planet. So I just wanted to say thank you to our civic leaders. I wanted to say thank you to Congressman Thompson, Assemblymember Cecilia Aguilar-Curry for all of your efforts and everything that you're doing. And we hope that you will come visit us in the Sonoma Valley. Thank you. And I think now I get to reintroduce Congressman Thompson. See all of you.
Well, thank you all very much, and your explanation for the need and your understanding is incredibly important. And this is good. This is good for our district. It's good for our state, and it's good for our country. And I want to thank Chief. I want to thank you and your team for everything you do on a 24/7 basis. And I thought it was pretty great how you set this up in front of the antique fire engine, because we wouldn't expect you to respond to a fire in this fire engine, and nor should any of us be expected to move forward dealing with the technology of yesterday. So that's why this is real important. If any of the press have questions, somebody here will be able to answer.
And Mike, could you recite those figures for the for California coming from the bill?
I have those committed to memory. $25.3 billion for highways, $10 billion for transit, $4+ billion for bridges, millions and millions and millions for clean water and wildfire mitigation, $385 million for EVs, for the charging stations, and $100 million for broadband. Thank you all very much.